Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening. I'm glad to have all of you guys joining me once. The OpenLang class Europe scenery, produced by Orbx, recently released just a couple of days ago. I've had quite a bit of time to play around with it, and I can honestly say this is probably the release of the year, given its scale and the unbelievable transformation that the scenery does for Europe. It's incredible. If you have it already, then you already know what I'm talking about, and if you've been to the Orbx forums recently, then certainly you've seen what a lot of the feedback is already from the users who've already bought it. It's quite an immaculate program, to say the least. So today we're going to take some requests from all of you in terms of certain areas or locations you would like to see. Just make sure that you log in via the Twitch page, right into the chat box there, and just put in the airport codes for the nearest townships you'd like to see. And I'll do my best to try to facilitate as much as possible. We'll say about maybe an hour and a half today. Today we're going to start off in Switzerland, and let's see, give me just a second. We're actually going to start off at Grinchen and make our way over to Locarno and perhaps maybe Lugano, since those that's a pretty short flight once we get over to the other side of the Alps. Fairly short. And I'll probably set up the camera today. There we go. I've got my antlers going. That, of course, is my Track IR setup. Let's see here. Oops. Cord here is a little flimsy. There we go. Oops, what's going on here? I'll keep this thing stay put. There we go. So one of my favorite parts to fly is in the Orbx FTX regions, especially when I really started digging into prepared V2. The Orbx FTX regions, they look so good that they can be difficult to fly out of. And I've heard that feedback from a lot of other users of Orbx products as well. And that's just because once you move out of that and you start getting into the default terrain areas, the difference is so huge that it makes it difficult. Now, if you're flying 777s and 737s and all that good stuff, then it probably doesn't affect you that much because you're at high elevations flying over it. And in terms of when you fly over default, so it doesn't make maybe that big of a difference. But when you're flying VFR, the difference is huge, and naturally you want it to look as good as possible. So when FTX Global first came out, I was initially disappointed because it did not have that same flair that the FTX regions had. And little did I know at the very beginning, because I don't remember if the whole product setup was fully announced at the time, or maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention because I was still flying an FS9 and so have you. But one of the things that I always hoped for FS Global was that it would have the same look and appeal as the FTX regions. And so now that we have made our way into Vector and now OpenLang class Europe, now we can really see just how close they've gotten to it. And it's light years ahead of Ultimate Terrain and ground environment. I mean, this is light years ahead of that. So if you're still flying with the old Ultimate Terrain Europe and the ground environment X and all that stuff, I'm telling you, there's no comparison at all, especially if you're flying for VFR purposes. It looks great at high elevations too, but where this sort of scenery really makes its mark is at lower altitudes. I would say anywhere from 15,000 and below is where you're really going to enjoy it most. So for those of you who have it, you already know what I'm talking about. And again, so far all I've used, and one of the things I've heard as well from a lot of customers or end users is that they have found that they get even better performance now than they had before. So I think that's great too. As far as my performance goes, it's about the same. I have the performance counter in the top left hand corner there. You can see that it's really bouncing between 59 and 65. It's actually about the same. So even whereas I haven't seen an increase in performance, I certainly have not seen a decrease in performance, and I think that is a concern for a lot of people. The other thing that I'm sure would be a huge concern for people is not performance, but memory and VAS usage. And I found that this doesn't have that bigger of an impact than before. And if you watched the stream that I did day before yesterday, we changed 3 different aircraft and we visited like 5 different sceneries, and at no point during the 2-hour broadcast did I run out of memory. So I think that has a lot to say as well. So let's see, you guys are just starting to tune in. Renee, how's it going? As a matter of fact, Renee, if you want to come on, just let me know. Just shoot me a text in there, let me know, and you can dial up Skype if you like. Maybe you have some opinions of the scenery as well. But we fired up Alabeo's DA40, the Diamond DA40. It has a couple of issues with it. There's a that I've already notified Alabeo about. There's a little seam here in the panel, and I'll just try to zoom in here. You can notice right in the panel there, you can see the exterior. I don't know if you guys can see that. So that's one of the issues that I pointed out, and I'm hoping they'll be releasing an update for that soon. The other issue I noticed is, and I'm sure many of you couldn't possibly care less, but the interior handles are not clickable, so I cannot open the canopy from the inside. So those are the only 2 things I noticed about the aircraft in terms of things that probably need to be corrected. Let me just adjust track IR here. Let's see. That looks pretty good. So many of you will notice I've activated the camera today. That was by request for so many people day before yesterday. They wanted the camera on, so I thought, well, I'll give that a shot and see how that goes. So that's why you've got the camera today. Sorry, still just trying to get the proper... I've got to find my sweet spot. With Track IR, there's something of a sweet spot that I need to find. Okay, well, today we're at Grinchen. And the code for that, this is part of the Open Land Class West part of the scenery. And let's see, the code for that is Lima Sierra Zulu Bravo. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Burn. Lima Sierra Zulu Golf is a code for that. And this is FlyLogic. I'm a huge fan, as I mentioned before, of Orbx products. I do like the small airfields, and I'm a huge fan of what Orbx is getting into lately in terms of getting into these more regional airports. So in the case FlyLogic, it's almost like the Pacific Northwest of Europe in terms of how they've gone through and modeled in a lot of the smaller airfields. There's a number of airfields in Germany, but Germany is mostly flatland, unless of course you're in Bavaria or somewhere like that. But other than that, it's mostly flat, and I kind of like rough terrain. I like rolling hills and mountains and stuff like that. So between France, Switzerland, and Austria, that's where I tend to spend most of my time personally when it comes to VFR flying around Europe. Otherwise, most of my flying is going to be IFR. Whip out the Aerosoft Airbus Extended and with a nice Swiss livery and go Zurich to London or something like that. Those are most of the flights I do in Europe. But when it comes to FlyLogic, they've provided a number of these really nice, smaller airfields in Europe. And it all looks really nice. And the great thing is they all blend in essentially seamlessly with OpenLC Europe. They all blend seamlessly. And I actually took time and installed them all yesterday. I went like on an installing binge and just started installing everything. So I went to each one individually. I didn't fly yet, but just went to each one individually just to see how everything blended together. And they blend in perfectly. And the same goes for FS Dream Team Zurich. It's seamless. So if there's any concerns in regards to compatibility, I highly doubt you'll have any compatibility issues with these sceneries. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. And again, if you guys have any requests for any part of the scenery you'd like to see, I have all 19 gigabytes installed. So all I need is an airport code, and you can go in and see where your home city is, how it's represented in OpenLC. Because obviously, when Orbx created or when they were in the process of giving us the preview screenshots, they stuck to just some major cities, but obviously Europe is a huge region, so, or rather a huge continent full of regions, I should say. So I'm sure there's a lot that hasn't been seen. So if there's anything that any of you would like to see, just go ahead and type it into the chat box there, and I'll make it a point to display it. Right now, we're just going to go ahead and start making our way over to Locarno. So again, if you're not that familiar with Europe and a lot of the airports and options that are included, again, I would recommend you to check out FlyLogic. They have a lot of nice airfields, and by a lot, I mean probably 30 or 40 or so airfields, mostly in Switzerland. And as you notice with the fine shadows here, we're using Prepared V2, which is essentially it's become a feature that I can't live without. Clear on the right, clear on the left. Notice that little seam in the panel. It's a little annoying, but the moment they release the update, that'll go away, of course. Of course, they've done an excellent job with all of the scenery locations with OpenLC. I think what I find to be most impressive, though, is the farm areas. I feel like they got these areas down so perfectly. It's incredible. The positioning of the roads, the trees, and the coloration. The coloration of the farmland, I think, is perfect. It's amazing that you can really get the data to create an entire continent and re-represent it in Flight Simulator. It's impressive. So essentially, Europe has become my second Pacific Northwest, or my second FTX region, only in the sense that I feel like Europe has been entirely opened up now for VFR flying, which is something that I didn't do too often, only because it just doesn't look as good as the FTX regions, but now it does. So no one's made any requests yet, and if no one has any requests, absolutely fine with me. This is my my flying time today before I go out and do my exercising and start swimming my laps later on in the afternoon. So, of course, if you don't have a request, you're always welcome to just hang out, and we can visit a lot of the payware airports that are in the area. It's incredibly impressive. Although I think the river here could have used better coastlines, I think, in this area. Moving into some little stutters here in the area. The frame rates are still pretty high, though. I'm still seeing 58, 62. So very interesting news this week. It looks like PMDG has finally released the first service pack after release, which was almost a year ago. A long time to wait for a service pack. I feel like they sort of missed the point of what a service pack should be. What they've essentially released is a full-on update as opposed to just a service pack, which, if I'm not mistaken, was something that was always meant to be incremental updates within heavy updates. But nevertheless, they've had their rationale and they've explained why it's taken as long as it has, and I don't think anyone cares anymore. I think now that everyone has it and they're enjoying the 300 and they have those amazing weather radar technology that's been implemented, I think everyone is just having a good time, and who cares now if everyone finally has it. So I think that's a terrific thing. Unfortunately, I won't be enjoying it personally because it is not available for prepared V2 yet. And in an effort to give my arm a rest, I'm going to go ahead and cheat and use the autopilot here. And take a minute and look at some of your comments here. And Vorad is saying that it looks like an FTX region. It will make it hard for them to sell a region there. Now, well, the way that I see it, Vorad, is I think I see it in two different points of view. I think that for those who are really heavily into VFR flying, I think they'll still have a customer base for selling an FTX region here. Case in point, England has already been released, or rather the UK, and of course Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland has also been released. With that said, they're still in the process of developing FTX Norway. Now, in Open Land Class Europe, Norway is already covered. So I think that's probably going to be the first step that's going to determine if people will still buy FTX regions that are already covered by Open Land Class. And I believe that people still will. I think one of the great things about Open Land Class is, number one, the amount of time it takes to develop these FTX regions is it's extensive. It's a heavy load period to develop these FTX regions. So if you're flying in Asia, well, naturally there are no FTX regions that are going to be planned for Asia, and who knows at the moment what else Orbx has planned for FTX regions. I know that FTX Southern California is planned, and of course, as I just mentioned, they're working on Norway. It could very well be that Orbx may at some point decide maybe they're not going to do FTX regions anymore. I think with the advent of the Papua New Guinea scenery that was recently released, I think that had enough popularity that Orbx might start to adjust the business model in a sense where they'll just start developing and releasing products for Open Land class anyway. So as opposed to just being restricted to these specific FTX regions. I mean, I don't know if that would be a plan or not, but certainly what Open Land class has done is it has opened the entire world, and it doesn't just limit Orbx to developing in these FTX regions. And when you really think about it, in my opinion, FTX Northern Ireland and Ireland probably weren't necessary because there are very few to almost no airports there. There are the older airports from Ireland, and there's the recently released Dublin, and then Northern Ireland you have the recently released Belfast City, again Ireland, and then you have Aldergrove, which was released by UK 2000 quite a few years ago. But when it comes to VFR flying, there was no plan to ever release any airports for either of for the island in general. So it kind of leaves one to wonder, well, what was the purpose of making an FTX region there when Open Land class probably just could have done the job? The same goes for New Zealand. My whole thought process when New Zealand was created was that the purpose would be to fill it in the same way that as was done with Australia, as what's currently being done with Alaska and Northern California, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, that never took off, and I'm not really sure why, because New Zealand is one of the most beautiful places in the world, especially from the air, so why not have these destinations? To date, we've only gotten 2 airports from Orbx for New Zealand, and they're both on the South Island, and then of course there are a few airports from Godzone, but that's it. And Godzone, with their photo scenery subscription, actually looks quite significantly better than Orbx as an FTX region that covers New Zealand. So whereas I'm glad that Godzone has this terrific photo scenery subscription program, which I think is very affordable, and it's a great idea because you subscribe, you get to keep anything that's already been paid for, and you just get paid this yearly fee, and everything that's released is just yours for as long as you continue to subscribe. You'll continue to get new sceneries, or rather new coverage areas, but even then it still doesn't do much for the airports. And as fun as it is to fly over this beautiful terrain, it's not much fun when you don't have anywhere to land besides the default airstrip, which in my opinion, it's half the fun. I think where you start and where you finish all has something to do with the overall experience. So if you don't have a high quality pay-where airport to depart and land at, then it's like, great, you've got this great flight in between, but then the beginning and the end, there's not much to choose from. So I would like to see Godzone start to get back into doing airport scenery development as well, because they're very talented in that area, and they've just, the sad thing is they've only done so few. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Orbx will not be returning to New Zealand. I mean, they might. I wasn't expecting to get Queenstown last year, but we got it, and it's a terrific scenery. And so who knows? Maybe there is something that's being worked on under the veil that we don't know about. It certainly didn't come up in the recent. It didn't come up in the recent forecast, and the recent forecast really shows a lot of efforts that are going to be going into Northern California. So that's going to be interesting to see if anything else new does come out of New Zealand. But naturally, Papua New Guinea seems to be a favorite destination among a lot of simmers, and according to Tim and Harris, there will be more to come. They're not really alluding to what they will develop next. There was mention that there will be some work in the South Pacific somewhere, maybe an island or something like that. So definitely there are efforts now that are taking place that are already going on outside of FTX regions. So getting back to the point of OpenLC sort of just canceling out the point of doing FTX regions? I don't necessarily think so. I still think that there can be life in Europe for FTX regions, and notably, I think for the Alps regions. I think a great place to create an FTX region would be to maybe go from the Pyrenees in Bordeaux and then work your way all the way to the opposite end of the Alps in Austria. I think that would be a very decent FTX region covering all of the Alps regions, and then maybe in Italy you go as far south as the coast, and then maybe you go as far north as maybe I don't know, maybe 100 or 200 miles or something like that. I mean, it'd be a fairly big region, but significantly smaller than Norway, which is being developed now. So just a thought of mine, but I still think though that even though OpenLAN class looks as similar to FTX regions as it does, I still think though that there's life. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they made another announcement after Norway was complete. So there's a lot of comments here. Let's see. Greg is here. Yeah, Greg, the webcam came day before yesterday. I was getting a lot of requests. People wanted to see my ugly mugshot, so I said, okay, why not? I look like an idiot with my half antler here on my head. But other than that, yeah, we've got the webcam going now. Let's see, what else do we have here? For it says 3 letters, OOM. Sorry, what did he say? He said, OOM were always connected to the 4 letters PMDG. I don't know if that's true for everyone. I know for me, whenever I've done it in the past, the ideal thing to do is in the same way that you would create a flight scenario. For example, let's say, for example, you're just always flying from LAX to Denver. That's just a flight you do naturally, or maybe you do a Denver to Tampa or something like that. The only thing that you really need to do is just to follow the same flight plan every single time. And as long as you fly the flight plan every single time, you can save your panel state, and you just save the actual flight within Flight Simulator, say halfway through the flight. That way, you're probably going to anticipate you're going to have an OOM anyway, so the ideal thing to do would be to just shut the whole thing down once you're at cruise altitude, and then just fire everything up, reload your panel states, and then continue on. I think that's just one of those things that we all have to accept, given the limitations of FSX and Prepared, because obviously it's not 64-bit, so this is unfortunately one of the things we have to deal with. But I think people have found ways around it. Renee says the 300 ER is awesome. I am currently acquiring ASN. I was hoping for a promotional sale to coincide with the resale of SP1. Of course, there's not going to be a promotional sale, Renee. There's not going to be a promotional sale. You know why? Because everybody's going to buy it. They want it. So this is money. So I would not anticipate there would be any promotional sales yet. I highly doubt it anyway. And here is saying, in reading the forums, it appears the FPS went up, and unfortunately the VAS as well. There is an option to reduce the sounds to 22 kilohertz. And I'm assuming we're still referring to the PMDG 300, is that correct? Air 51 is looking forward to Bergen. Yeah, I've been looking forward to Bergen for a long time. As a matter of fact, I could literally fly to Bergen now and you would see that the Cloud9 version is still active, very much active as a matter of fact. So as soon as Joe is done with the with his version, Cloud 9 will finally be gone forever. I'm also looking forward to getting a replacement for Amsterdam as well, which is another Cloud 9 favorite of mine. But Norway is really making a serious appearance in Flight Simulator. Of course, you have Tor, who's doing a great job with his project, and I think that's going to take us. I think Joe has 2 more projects in Norway as well, and then let's not forget this KDM Design team who's developing Torp. Is it Torp? Oslo Torp, something like that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. So a number of projects in Norway. So I think once you coincide all of that with the FTX region that's being developed, again, I think it's all going to come together nicely. And depending on how many people pay for that version of FTX will, I think, dictate if Orbx should or should not continue making these European FTX regions. So I think it's one of those things that's gonna you kind of have to wait and see. But I think there's already a good foundation behind Norway, and I think a lot of people are going to get behind it. Funny text message. Somebody's got me up on their big screen. There you go. Oh, that's nice. Awesome. Okay, let's see what else you guys are talking about here. We've got a little bit of a ways to make our way to our destination. In the meantime, take a look at those open land class textures there. And let's see. And Erica, if I'm saying that correctly. I think I'm saying that correctly. Let's see. It's off. I turned it off. I'm not gonna even look at you, babe. Trust me. Let's see. Eric is saying, I'll surely buy Norway. I live in Sweden, so neighbor country makes sense. Oleum is saying, any plans for Norway? Friesland, word has it OpenLC is not very detailed in Scandinavia. Well, in that case, Oleum, I think that would be an excellent opportunity for you to start punching in some iCal codes for me to visit. And we can actually take a look at Scandinavia. That's sort of the whole point. So rather than go by any rumor that might be present, this might be an excellent opportunity for you to take a look live and see how Scandinavia actually comes, how it comes out. But as far as plans for Norway, as I mentioned, there's a number of airports already available. And Joe, if I'm not mistaken, is also working on a couple of other airports as well for Norway. So there's plenty, I think, planned for Norway in the near future. Renee says they could have made some good sales. I'm assuming you're referring to the PMDG and ASN. They're going to make sales anyway. I think they're going to make sales no matter what they do. I think they know that. Flight Deck Simulations in the house. Welcome back. Someone says my video is frozen. Shouldn't be. Hope not. I don't think so. No, it's not frozen. I think it's fine. Well, let's go back to full screen here. That doesn't look good. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, I believe according to Vorad, I think Norway is planned to be released this year, if I'm not mistaken. So it looks like we do have some requests for Bergen. I see that. Okay, I got that, Vorad. Yes, we will take a visit to Bergen. Just bear in mind that it's the old Cloud9 version that I have installed. So, and that you guys prefer that I deselect that from the add-on scenery menu, and you want to just see it from default, and I can do that as well. I know that's a much older scenery, so. And Flight Deck says Austria HD Pro looks better than Man Class. Well, that's because you're looking at photo scenery. So obviously, I don't think anything is going to be more realistic than photo scenery, no matter what you do. And again, I've already mentioned the subscription from the subscription from Godzone, and then of course you have Earth Simulations, who's creating this Autogenesis, which is essentially it's an FTX region that they're developing on their own, except it's 100% based on photo scenery. And then they're putting all of their autogen on top of it. And autogen can be as big as a city building and as small as a street lamp. I mean, that's just how much detail that they're working on putting into that project. So that's going to be huge. But my concern about that is going to be far greater than an FTX region or Open Land Class when it comes to, number one, capacity. Because I think for the UK alone, I think is like something like 30 gigabytes or something crazy, and I'm sure someone can correct me on that, but it's a huge file. So I don't think many people will have the ability to experience the whole thing simultaneously. I think they'll have to just select certain regions within it. But just to give yourself an idea of what that might look like, if you have the Isle of Man scenery from Earth Simulations, and you already get sort of an idea of just how accurate it looks. So it's incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable just how good it looks. But in terms of how it's going to affect your memory, and of course, as we already know, it's going to suck quite a bit of your hard drive. There is some concern there as it pertains to that. Sierra says, I only get out-of-memory errors. The only out-of-memory errors I get is with JB Tiskey's Newark and Manhattan X with the PMDG 777. Oh my God. Really? You tried to jam all that into one place? Yeah, that's an OOM nightmare. Eric says, I bought X-Plane 10 Global yesterday, and it is a big 64-bit optimized. Yeah, that's true. X-Plane is more advanced than Prepared is in terms of the fact that it is a 64-bit. That's true. Not many options for third-party add-ons for it, though. So there's that. Still working my way down the list with your comments. Murray says, DeAndre, I can see that you have warp jumps, like me after installing OpenLC. Warp jumps. I'm not sure I know what that means. If you're referring to stutters, yes, there were some stutters and panning around. If you leave one point of view set for too long, then I think the way the simulator assumes is, okay, he's just going to stay in this viewpoint. So we can get lazy and not have to load everything in high definition, because I'm using 4096 texture. So I think what the simulator goes is, okay, he's only looking at the panel. He's not doing a lot of panning around. So why do I need to then go through the trouble of fully rendering ground textures when he's not looking at it. So when I switch it very quickly and pan around, I think you see that jump because the system's like, oh my god, he's trying to do something, quick, load something, or So I think that's why you get those stutters right after. But in general, we have to keep in mind that I'm using the Open Broadcaster software, so I always make sure I point that out, because what winds up happening is the OBS uses a huge portion of the CPU, so it starts burning through cores pretty quickly when you're running simulator with these high settings, and then of course broadcasting simultaneously. So that's something always to sort of keep in mind. And of course, my family's probably using the internet anyway, so that it could have an effect on you even more so if you're seeing big jumps, which is certainly not something that I'm seeing here. But if you're seeing huge jumps, it could be bandwidth as well. Those Alps are getting mighty closer. Let's see if we can squeeze this little bird a little bit higher. I don't want to go too high because I want to be close enough to the terrain that we actually get to see it. Renee's saying, how does Open Land class look in Bergen? I actually don't know. I haven't been there yet, so that's going to be our first stop. Once we land, we will head straight over to Bergen and have a look. In fact, I might increase the simulation rate a little bit just for the sake of time. Fred says DeAndre's half antler looks like an arrow to the head. I know. It's yeah, it looks really funny on my head. In fact, I never saw myself in the mirror with this thing on my head before, so I didn't realize how stupid I looked until I turned on the camera the other day. And I was like, oh my god, yeah, it's... And then someone said I look like one of Santa's reindeer. Yeah, there's a lot of comments on that. It's pretty hilarious. I guess, I guess TrackIR doesn't look that dumb on the head when you have it attached to headphones the way it's supposed to be. But in my case, the headphones, it's summer here, so it's already a bit warm. I don't want to run the air conditioner all day, and I already have a fan that's going underneath the desk, so yeah, nice and cool. But anyway, so I don't want to, it's too hot when you have the muffs on and all that stuff, so I'm just using a woman's headband that I got from Rite Aid or whatever, and it looks very pretty. It makes me look beautiful. It gives me a sense of style, and I can look gorgeous as I fly. Indeed. Flight Deck Simulation says that you're able to watch this broadcast on your iPad. I don't know how that's possible because I can't watch on my iPad. It doesn't let me. So I don't know if you're on an iPad or maybe you're on an Android device, but on iPads and iPhones, Twitch doesn't work. So it'd be nice to know how it is that you're getting it to do that. I know there's a Twitch app, but I think in order for the app to work, don't you have to have like 200 people watching live or something like that? So I think there's only like 50 of you watching, so I don't think that's enough for the Twitch app to activate. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Let's take a look. Because I've always tried to catch the stream on my phone, and I don't know, it never seems to work for me. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. How do you do it? ADX LIVE. Oh, I wonder how many streamers you have to have for that to work. It's just a blank screen though. That's weird. There's no actual video though. I don't know. I can actually see the comments, but there's no actual video. So I don't know. It never seems to work for me. So I've long since given up on that a long time ago. And those mountains are starting to come into view. Should brighten up my screen a little bit here. That's a little bit better. Let's see. And Jetline saying, I can't believe how good this area looks. It looks great from the top-down view. Switch back over to top-down. Of course, we're coming in over the mountains now, so... like I said before, I think it looks best when you're flying over the farmland. I think they did a really good job with the coloration of that. Looks really good. Let's see. Oh, Borat is saying Earth simulations for the whole UK is 4 terabytes? Theoretically, no, I don't think it's that much. Ben Weston, CEO of Airline 2 Sim, actually has like a pre-beta version of it, and I think he's using that as some of the backdrop for his, I think they're using it for the Twin Otter cadet training program, and he actually told me how big it was, and I don't think it was like 4 terabytes. I think it was like 30 gigabytes or something like that. 4 terabytes is ridiculous because who's running 4 terabytes? That's insane. I mean, even I myself, I do have about 5 terabytes, but I mean, we're talking about external hard drives and all that stuff. But internally, I don't think anybody has more than maybe 1.5 to 2 terabytes on average. I doubt that. Yeah, there's no way that would work. I mean, how do you download to 4 terabytes of data? Could you imagine? A whole year would go by before you had it. Well, you guys actually get it to work on the iPad. I'm guessing you guys are using the app. But anyway, for me on the app, I just get a blank screen. So, but that's Twitch. Twitch is very buggy, and I wouldn't be surprised at some point if Twitch just logs us out altogether. It's done that before, a few times actually. Let's see. Oh, Eric's saying the PC panics when I change view. It doesn't do that when I'm not broadcasting, I can say that. Am I using Pilots or FS Genesis? If we're referring to weather, I use Pilots FS Global Real World Weather, which I'm not using now. I guess I should turn that on, and see what the real weather conditions are. Let me try to turn that on just for kicks and giggles. But for as far as the environmental generation, I'm using the Rex 4 Texture Direct. Why not load up some weather? Let's see what the real weather conditions are right now. I like that this slows up in real time, which is really cool. We'll just do a static weather download because we don't want to bug the internet connection too much. Most current weather, and we'll see what the weather at destination is. We'll put in destination weather. Actually, the nearest airport, I think, is Samdan. What's the nearest airport? Sion? No, it's not Samdan for sure. It's mostly like Sion. Lima Sierra, Golf Sierra. Let's just put that in and see. Let's see. No, there's not much for weather right now. We'll pan upward a little bit so we can see the weather inject. There we go. Look at that. It did it like right away. There we go. So now we've got the real weather conditions right now. Not bad. Actually, looks a little bit better, doesn't it? Looks like there's some thermals too. Let me take another look at that. Wind 50 degrees at 3 knots. 360 degrees to 100. Visibility 30 kilometers. Sky cover broken at 12,000 feet. Temperature 26 degrees. Dew point 19. Pressure 29.95. So that's what we got right now. Not bad. Renee says this is so fabulous. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad to see that the iPad is working for many of you. I don't know why it doesn't want to work for me, though. That's kind of funny. It never just works for me. I've given up on it. So we're at saying one region of the Autogenesis is 30 gigabytes with Autogen and photos. And UK is a dozen regions or more. I guess that's how they're going to release it. I think that's an interesting concept. Eric has a 6.5 terabyte. Wow, that's quite a bit of space. I wonder Erica, how much of that 1.4 was it 6.5? How much are you actually using now? That's a good question. How much stuff you got on there, man? Oh, we're talking about the mesh. If we're talking about mesh, what I've got is FS Global 2010. If you go back and look at the Orbx in the Orbx forum, there, one of the things that they specify is that you have FS Global 2010. I guess you could use another mesh. I'm just a fan of FS Global. I've used it since they released their first one in FS9 many years ago. So I'm sort of a creature of habit. Since they already make a stellar product, I just stick with it. I think Pilots is the best at what they do. So yeah, so FS Global 2010, and then on top of that is FTX Global, then FTX Global Vector, and then OpenLC Europe. Now the funny thing is I do have Switzerland Pro, but I'm debating as to whether or not I'm going to reinstall it. I think what I might wind up doing, it just depends, because with the Swiss Pro you can still elect to just use the Autogen objects, like what's it called? I forget what you call it, but they have all the objects you can still use, but elect not to have the photo scenery. So it just depends. I think I'm gonna install it, try it with it, try it without it, and go back and forth. It just depends, because if I install it, then essentially I would be installing that on top of Europe, and now we're adding like a fifth layer, and I think that's just a bit too much. So it just depends. And the same thing goes for Austria. The only problem is, and the good thing with Swiss Pro is you get winter textures. With Austria, there's no winter textures. So that's sort of a deal breaker for me, if you will, not having winter textures. So I don't know yet. I haven't fully made up my mind how I'm going to handle that. I mean, as far as authentic representation, yes, it looks better in terms of authenticity, but obviously VAS usage, memory, and performance are all three things that we have to try to balance to find the best compromise. So I'm not fully sure yet. Gonna squeeze us a little bit higher, go up another 1,000. So far we have Bergen, and that's where we'll be heading next. Let's see. Eric says FSX on one hard drive, prepared on the other two 3 terabyte hard drives, and then one 250 gigabyte for the Windows 7, and then one 250 gig for some random files. So I don't know how much else I use. Well, what I have at the moment, and my desk is a real mess because I pan the camera around so you can see what I have, but it's really filthy. But so internally in the Jetline Systems PC, we have a 1 terabyte SSD, And I try to keep that solely for the operating system, and for prepared. Any other non-essential programs goes into another internal 2 gig 7500 RPM hard drive. 2 gig or 2.5. Greg could probably correct me on that. And then externally, we've got one 4 terabyte Western Digital. What are you called? You're called the MyBook. And another Western Digital drive, which I bought right around the time that 1 terabyte drives were becoming popular. So you can imagine that was, I've had that drive maybe 7 years or something like that. And I got that at a very good deal at Fry's. So, and then another 500 gig hard drive, which is one of the smaller, this little guy right here. And that's mostly used for the laptop. So this is the 500. And that travels usually with the laptop. And keep music and stuff on there, so on and so forth. That's about it. So altogether, we're looking at 7, 8. So I think altogether I have about 8.5 terabytes. Plus, there's actually a 500 gig SSD in the computer upstairs, and I'm going to yank out of my stepson's computer in the coming weeks and put that back down in here. So, yeah, he's loving that, but I'm taking it back. And let's see. Renee's got 5.5 terabytes. FS, photography, movies, TVs, Photoshop, all that good stuff. Yeah, especially photography. I think on my drives altogether, I'm probably using about maybe 700 gigabytes just in my photography photos. I haven't been taking any photos lately, and I haven't gone spotting recently either, but I have huge photos from Europe and East Coast and all over the place, Dubai, that I've taken, and so they're all just kind of cluttered up on the hard drive. Yosemite pictures, all that kind of stuff. So it seems like one can never have enough space for photos because you never delete them, so you just wind up needing more and more space as time goes on. Take a look at those Alps. Sorry, the scenery has to reload because I still have that doggone control tower shot in there. So yeah, it's looking a little bit blurry. It'll come back in a minute. Alright, it says Orbx cooperates with pilots. Orbx does texture and land class of pilots made Vector and Global. If it's Global Mesh, you can actually order Vector as a DVD directly from pilots. Pilots guys are actually providing support and previews for Vector in the Orbx forum. Well, I certainly can't stress enough that collaboration in this community is, I think, phenomenal. It's good to see different companies working together because there are so few. And with the few that we have, there's obviously a lot of competition for such a small market. So quite naturally, whenever 2 or more developers or development companies come together, I think it benefits everyone. So the fact that Pilots is working closely with Orbx to deliver these stellar products, I think it's a great thing, and I can only just give my kudos and tip my hat to the efforts as a result, or rather to the results, the results as a result to their efforts. Sorry. Hang on. Sorry guys, turn off my camera every now and then because my wife is walking around in the background. She doesn't want to be a celebrity today, so I'm sure you'll understand. Eric says, I want to go ski in the Alps. Never gotten to do that. That'd actually be nice some point. This year, very little snow. The winter's almost snowless, and I live at an elevation of 2,000 feet close to the Alps, according to Vorad. You know, Vorad, I think it's global warming. I'm going to be honest with you. In Southern California, we have mountains nearby, And almost every year we get up to, I mean, snow usually gets down to like, say, the 4,000 foot level. And the local mountains, the highest altitude I think in the local mountains is something like 9,500 feet. So when we get snow down to the 4,000 foot level, oh, I can turn that back on. When we get snow down to the 4,500 foot level, that means at the higher elevations you're looking at 6-7 feet of snow, and so we have a lot of snow, rather winter resorts and stuff here. But given the drought that California is in right now, I think we're in the worst drought in California history. We haven't gotten snow in the last 2 years, so it's really kind of a bummer. And so naturally the thought process is, well, let's go to Northern California, to Mammoth or something like that. But the downside of that is that they're also affected by the drought in Northern California. So unfortunately, there's just no snow at all. And so the only next place to get snow is if you try to go as far north as, say, like Idaho or Colorado. But even a friend of mine who lives in northern Idaho says that they're not getting as much snow as they used to. So I don't see why Switzerland would be any different, but I think that perhaps maybe it's just one of those things that's a part of global warming, because I think a lot of places around the world just aren't seeing as much snow as we used to, and that's kind of really a bummer for California, because the great thing about California is you literally, it could be snowing in the mountains, and you could be at the beach, and it could be 80 degrees on the beach, and you could have 5 feet of snow in the mountains. So I mean, you could, and then you could go from the beach to the mountains the same day and ski and surf in the same day, because the difference from the beach to the nearest ski resort is something like an hour drive. So literally in a period of an hour you could go from surfing to skiing, but that's not the case for us, at least not for the last couple of years, and we're not very optimistic for 2015 either. So that's really something of a bummer for us, to be honest. And Vort says, not so fast. The 2 winters before were extremely long with a lot of snow. We had snow from November 2012 and 2013. Well, I'll also say this. The U.S. East Coast has been having some really bad winters also. And the winters have been longer, and they've been getting really hit pretty hard in the late months of the winter season as well. So I think perhaps in certain places, maybe the effects are different, because the way that the East Coast has been seeing its winters lately is it's unusual. It's very unusual. So I guess the question would be is if your winters are longer than usual. I guess that would be a question, because even like you look at that Hurricane Sandy that hit a couple of years ago, and I don't think New York has ever been hit with something that extreme. So I think a lot of people were just attributing that to just climate change. So if you're saying, Brett, if your winters are the way they've always been, then I guess it's not a big deal. I mean, I've been to Europe both in winter and summer, and as far as I'm concerned, it's all good. It's fun either way. Getting a close-up look at some of the textures at high elevation. We're about 14,500, and you can get an idea of how close the ground is. It's probably a couple thousand feet below, and the textures are pretty crisp, minus some stutters. But mind you, we've got some pretty thick cloud coverage as well, and clouds can always slow things down a tiny bit. And let's take a quick look. Bump the I gotta bump the simulation rate up just a little bit. I know some of you guys are looking forward to looking at some of the other regions, and I can only run my mouse for so long There we go. Go back to normal now. Saved ourselves about probably 7 minutes. And of course now the downside of that is we've got to wait for the scenery to reload. Where's our airplane? There she is. And in fact, we'll probably go ahead and start our descent as well. Well, that's interesting, Vorat. So you're saying even in Switzerland, the drought in California has made big news there. Well, we're all crossing our fingers that we'll get another El Nino event. We had the last El Nino event we had was back in 1990. Just thinking off the top of my head, I think it was like 1998 or 97. I believe it was 98, and it pretty much rained continuously for like 5 months in a row. And there were floods everywhere, and it was insane. And the problem about LA is when it rains here, people forget how to drive. So, as you can imagine, lots of road incidences and stuff like that. But we're hoping for another El Nino this year, but there's really nothing for sure to suggest that it will happen. Oh, he says I'm a kraut, not a cheese. Sorry about that. Hey, but I love the cheese in Switzerland. Don't knock it. A little cheese and a little sauerkraut. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. What happened to my sound? Sound blaster. Where are you? There we go. Cheat and use the easy autopilot. So if you're just joining, we're en route from Grinchen to Locarno. And just showing off the Orbx OpenLC Europe over the Alps. And there's your Alps right there. Looking very nice, looking very crisp. An amazing representation, that's for sure. Let's just kill the autopilot altogether. This aircraft is very difficult to stall. I tried stalling it once, and I couldn't get it to spin or anything. It just sort of hung out, went into a stall, the nose drops, and then it just gets enough airspeed to keep flying, and that kept happening over and over. No matter what I did, I couldn't get this thing to stall. So I think one potential thing that would be nice to see for a future update to Prepared is, I guess, an improvement in the flight dynamics engine somehow. Sort of, I think that's one area that X-Plane obviously has a leg up, and certainly DCS is when it comes to flight dynamics, and I would like to have more realistic flight dynamics. I mean, if you've ever flown a real plane, then you know the differences. I mean, obviously you can't feel what's going on, but you can still get a feel for how it should feel even virtually. And I think for the most part, aircraft developers have done a really good job in making very good flight dynamics. Especially the chap who did the ones for this lovely plane, which is it Brent Stoll? He does a very, very good job at what he does. But even with that said, overall, especially with like helicopters, the flight dynamics for a flight simulator could be improved. Looking at that seam is really jumping out at me, isn't it? You can kind of see there. I'm surprised they still haven't released an update for that yet. I thought they would have fixed that by now. And those shadows look very lovely. And this time, Alabeo gave us an aircraft that was in a bit of used condition. We have some scuffed up interior markings here, and the weather is a little bit worn, as opposed to a lot of their older aircraft like the Stagger Wing or the C-195 business liner, which both look pristine and brand new. The DA-40, which is a newer aircraft, not brand new obviously, I mean it's been around for a while, but as a newer aircraft, this one actually looks a little bit beat up, and the older aircraft look a lot more new. So I thought that was interesting, but it's a welcome change to have some worn looking aircraft. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind if Alabeo actually, for once in a while, if they actually had released some exterior aircraft, some exterior repaints with some beat up looking dirt, and show some fuselages that look like they've had a pounding over the last 30-40 years. I think that would be nice to see that too. All of our aircraft always have a way of looking so incredibly pristine. Just taking a look at that topography down there, that looks very nice. Very well done. Looks very realistic too, doesn't it? So we should be on the ground in a few minutes, and then we will head over to Bergen. That seems to be the only request that I've gotten so far. So again, if there's a request for a certain region or area that you'd like to see, just go ahead and remind me, and we'll make sure we head over and take a look. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of how Open Land class is represented, as opposed to just looking at preview screenshots. Sorry. There was no water in it though, right? There was? Did I spill water? I'm sorry. It's the rain's fault. It started raining in the simulator, and then I wanted to see what the water felt like in real life, so that's why I just spilled a little bit. So the weather conditions are actually looking quite good. There's precipitation at the lower altitudes. Looking very realistic. Getting a little bit close to the the terrain here, so you can get a better idea of how it all comes together. So very doggone close when you look at it. I mean, it's pretty darn close. And it's funny because I hadn't bothered to install any of these Swiss sceneries, because I just knew that, for example, Locarno is a very scenic approach, which is, we're actually approaching Locarno now, but we're not on the proper approach for it, because I'm sort of just showing off the terrain. But as you can see, it's a scenic approach. So quite naturally, flying in with just a default representation, it looked pretty bad, and the default textures in prepared look worse than FSX. So I just didn't bother to install them. I didn't even bother. But with the Open Land class, I really had to see the difference with these approaches, and I have to say it's impressive. It's very impressive. So again, if you're a fan of flying in the Pacific Northwest, or a fan of what's the other one? Is it PFJ? I'm trying to remember. Or South Alaska. What's the other one? The other one by Holger with Sika. I forgot what that one was called. But if you're a fan of this sort of topography, especially for VFR flying, then I recommend you start giving Switzerland a look. Day before yesterday, we actually visited some of the French airports, the French Alps airports as well. And so if this is your thing, if you like this sort of vista as you're on an approach, then I would recommend you start checking out some of the FlyLogic offerings. Orbx has already provided the region. All you need is just a nice airport to land in. Very scenic. I remember back in the day, Cloud9 had a package called Fly the Lakes, and they basically simulated a bunch of airports in and around the Lake Como area, a lot of the Italian VFR destinations. It would be really nice to see them go back and do something like that. They're really headstrong on doing mega airports, and whereas Cloud9 did a little bit of everything. They had their X-class sceneries. I mean, they had a little bit of everything, and but nowadays they only do mega airports. But it would be good to see them, release something of a VFR from a VFR perspective. And there is a slight crosswind up here too. Look at that farmland, huh? That terrain, I should just say terrain. And you've got some nice sort of volumetric fog there in the background. And this is FS Global Real Weather, by the way. So we are looking at the real world weather conditions right now. Wow, it's kind of blowing me slightly off the runway here. Ooh, I can really feel it. And welcome to Locerno. You can't say this doesn't look nice, huh? This is very nice. It all looks so much better than before. Look at those effects. Wow. Switch to the external view here. There we go. So nice mountains surrounding the airport, and that's why this is one of my favorite destinations in Europe. It's just look at the the surrounding area. It's very nice. It sort of has that Pacific Northwest sort of feel, but obviously these are the Alps, the Southern Alps to be exact, and it's very scenic, very scenic. So again, the airport is by FlyLogic, and like I said, they've made a number of airports up here, and the quality is almost just as good as anything that you would expect from Orbx. Not quite, but almost. And this is Locarno. So let's see. The next request was from Bergen. So we will head to Bergen next. I am going to select a helicopter, and while I do that, let me just go back and take a look at the comments you left while I was busy with my horrible flying skills. Let's see. Alex, welcome aboard. Namal's asking what aircraft were we flying. That was the Alabeo Diamond DA-40, just released a couple of weeks ago. It's a very nice cockpit. It's a very nice aircraft. And someone's asking, are we flying in Norway? Nope, we were in Switzerland, south of Switzerland to be exact. And Variety says that's why I love P3D. It's the real FS11. I couldn't agree more. Of course, FS11 was essentially flight, and flight as an engine was actually miles ahead of prepared, but, well, we all know where that went, so. Did I just scream? Someone's talking about screaming. Did I scream? Oh, that was when I dropped my water. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yes, that was my girly scream. It was designed to match my headband. Mom says, a problem I have with prepared is the joystick disappears in Windows 8. Are you sure that, well, I don't know why that would happen. That's weird. But Windows 8 is a joke, so I can't even comment on that. IF Frozen something, I can't see you saying, am I using a weather add-on? Again, that was FS Global Real World Weather, and the weather that we were flying through was the actual weather conditions as it sits right now. Now I'm just going to switch to a helicopter. Sorry, because I know your screen probably went black. Well, you should be looking at my mugshot anyway, so. Let me see here. I have a huge aircraft list, so sometimes it takes me a while to find something that I want. Here we go. And we're going to cross our fingers and hope we're not going to get an OOM, because as it typically happens, when I start switching things up quite a bit, I tend to get OOMs. So we are going to hope that I'm not going to get an OOM. I'm going to turn off my camera really quickly because I'm in my underwear and I need to get some water. Hang on one second. And actually, I'll do a quick fly around this area too so you can see it one more time before we go. And I think I saw another request in there for, was that the Netherlands? All right, so I'm going to do just a quick departure so you can see the airport by FlyLogic. And yes, I know the helicopter is not exactly fitting for the region, but that's okay. It's just a quick selection. So again, this is Locarno. And as you can see with the open land class Europe, it's very, although that building is kind of funny, that little curved building, I don't know what that's about. But a very, very scenic area. Alright, so now we're going to head over to ENBR, Echo November, Bravo Romeo. Bergen, and this is by request. Fasuli's joining us. Welcome aboard. Panga for you. Welcome. You guys are going to start seeing people walking up and down the streets with this with the head antler thing. I'm telling you, this is the new style. You guys just wait. You think I look like an idiot now, but once everyone starts doing it, I'm telling you. Okay, the tulip fields around Echo Hotel Lima Echo. You have to switch to springtime to see the tulip fields. Okay, let me just write that down. Echo Hotel Lima Echo. And we have to switch to spring. Got it. Oh, you know what? That's right. Cloud9 isn't installed here. It's installed on the computer upstairs. I don't know why I thought it was installed here, because when I did my review of Oslo, I forgot it was on the old computer. But that's okay. You don't want to see the old Cloud9 Bergen anyway. Alright, so by request, we have made our way over to Bergen in Norway, and I know this is not necessary, but I feel like I just want to whomp, whomp, whomp. Okay. And let me adjust me eye point here. And make our way over to Bergen. So soon this will all be covered in the amazing efforts by Joe Erland, so well known for his Oslo scenery. Oslo V2 now. And there's another airport he did further to the north, which he's going to redo, and I think it's called, is it Trondheim Varns or something like that? I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but that's just how it's spelled. That's how it's written. So this area is OpenLC North. And again, when you purchase OpenLC, you don't have to install all 4 regions. You have North, South, East, and West. If you want to know what they cover specifically, you can go to the product page and download the manual. You don't need to buy the product to see the manual, and that'll give you a more detailed understanding as to what's covered under each region. So if you're one of those folks who are hurting for hard drive capacity, then naturally you'll probably just want to stick to whatever region you likely use most, and you don't have to install them all. Alternatively, if you do want to install them all, but you find that you still don't have enough space to store the installers, you can put the installers on another hard drive and then install it to your primary. So you have that option as well. Now mind you, these are 4096 textures, so it's quite a bit crisp. Some cars on the roads. The cars don't obviously show up on the photoreal roads, but only on the roads as notified by Flight Simulator. That's what it looks like. And actually, the real weather is still activated. I just don't know if it adjusts to my location automatically or not. I think what it is just a static download, so I'm not really sure what it's doing at the moment. If it just defaulted back to the original setting or not, I'm not really sure. But that's okay, it still looks good, so we're not going to worry about it too much. So if you're just turning in, we are by request. We're looking at Bergen, and our next stop will be in the Netherlands. And current time is 12:06 for me, so we've got about another 20 minutes. And then I've got to go do my swimming. It may not look like it, but I'm at 197 pounds, so where I should be realistically is probably around 175. Somewhere between 175 and 180 is where I should be. So got to hit the pool. Got to hop on the bike too. That'll be next week. It's easy to get fat sitting here with the flight simulator, I can tell you that. Got to take care of our health. So this is Bergen. And hopefully, for some of you who live in the area, if you're joining in and watching now, hopefully Open Land Class Europe North has given Bergen a decent representation of the area. I think it looks beautiful, in my opinion. And I think the only thing it's missing is Joe Erland's new Bergen Friesland, which is in development, which probably will be released sometime, hopefully, well, probably not this month. That might be too soon, but hopefully by next month. And yes, Joe will be redoing that Trondheim scenery. I don't know if he mentioned that publicly. I don't know if that was just in private or not. I'm trying to remember now. Was I supposed to say that? But screw it. Yeah, he's gonna be redoing that one in the future as well. He's taking good care of Norway for us. So. That Bodo scenery, I noticed you guys are talking about that. Man, I hope it won't be too long to wait for that. I've been following that Bodo scenery on Tor's personal website for, gosh, it's been a couple years now. So I'm happy to see that it's going to be part of FTX Norway. But it's a long time coming waiting for that particular scenery, and I'm really hopeful that it will get delivered this year. Probably doubtful, but I can certainly hope for it. Fred says, burn 20 pounds, swim to Catalina. Yeah, Catalina is, what, I think that's 27 miles? From where I live, it's about 30 miles. Catalina Island. Yeah, there's just no way I'm gonna swim there. I've got friends who jet ski there, and I don't even know if I'd want to do that. Jet skiing in the open ocean, that ain't fun. When you fall off, you better get your butt back on that thing quick. All kinds of sharks. Dot 3D says there was some strange water by the runway where I took off. Well, we'll head back to the runway and land before we head over to Netherlands, so we'll go back and take a look and see what that was. Probably because of Vector. Vector has these elevation parameters that it sets, and so in some cases you need it, in some cases you actually want to disable it. So depending on what the case is for Bergen, it's probably one of those cases where it's enabled and it should be disabled, or it's disabled and it should be enabled. And by doing one of those two things, we'll probably correct whatever error that you saw. But we'll just head back over there and take a look. How does this helicopter not have a tail rotor? Someone's asking. That's Panga asking that question. Yeah, this is the MD-902 Explorer. And I'll let you look into that yourself. But in a short explanation, what it does is it simply works in a similar way that an engine does. You notice here when I turn the when I turn the rudder, it operates as the rudder. You notice that? and it's actually blowing air out. So just like similar to an airplane engine, it's sucking and blowing air. But you could pull up a Wikipedia article on the McDonnell Douglas MD-902, and it'll explain not only does it not have a tail rotor, but it's actually a more stable helicopter than helicopters that have tail rotors. So I'll let you research that. DeAndre, I know you already made a request, or I already made a request. Can I show Mount Vesuvius? Yes. Okay, so that's where we're going to close today. We'll do, I think, was that it, or was there another one besides? Someone said Laustat. Let me see if I can work that in. Hang on. Echo Hotel Lima Echo. No hands. Woo! I didn't crash. And then to get to Mount Vesuvius, we need to go to Naples. L-I-R-N. Can someone tell me what Naples is? It's not L-I-R-N. It's, oh shoot, what's the iCal code for Naples? Do me a favor, Lewis, and plug in the iCal code for Naples for me, because I think that's the closest airport to Mount Vesuvius, if I'm not mistaken. And can someone remind me too what the iCal code was, so I don't have to scroll, for the airport in the Netherlands that we wanted to see, please? If I can get those two codes in, and then we can breeze through this really quickly. So it looks like here with the water, it looks like there's just a seam where the airport meets, I guess, the rest of the terrain. I'm guessing it's possibly it's just an elevation with the airport. I think that will probably be corrected with the third-party scenery. But yeah, it looks like the water wants to continue going under the ramp here. So it's obviously bad data for that lake or whatever you want to call it, in the way that it meets the scenery. But I would probably play around with vector, because I think that's really a vector issue, not an OpenLC issue. But either way, I think with a third-party scenery, that would probably be corrected. But nevertheless, even if you don't have third-party, I'm sure you'd want that fixed. So if you have the programs, then I would probably try looking at fooling around with vector a little bit. Okay, we got LIRN. EHLE was the one. Oh, I wrote it down. Stupid. And we need to change the weather to spring. Okay. So let's go to time and season. Let's go to spring. Daytime. And then we will change to the... So we've got 3 airports left. We've got EHLE. We have... what was Lelstad again? Oh, that was EHLE. No. What was Lelstad? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Lelstad is Netherlands. I'm sorry. I confused myself. EHLE in spring and then LIRN. Okay, so we just have 2 destinations left, and we've got about 15 minutes. Okay, we can do that. Okay, well, we went to spring, but then we wound up with a little bit of snow in Bergen, so that's Norway for you. Okay, and let's change our airport. Echo Hotel Lima Echo. There she is. I think I have an airport for this too, somewhere. One of my hard drives. I think Aerosoft, right? I have so many products it's not even funny, but yeah, I think I do have an airport for that, but it's not installed here at the moment. And this is where Renee lives. This is your neck of the woods, dude. All right. Renee, do you have is it necessary to have a heading that I should depart off of? I mean, we're facing 3-3 now, it looks like. So if there's a heading in terms to get to these poppy fields that you're referring to, that might be a little bit helpful. And of course, then I just have to wait for the delay for you to respond. So 2-3. Heading is 2-3. And we are in the spring, so we will just wait and see if Renee can give us a heading. If he has one. A Freudian slip. I guess that's just how I chose to hear it, but still waiting for a heading, Renee. If he doesn't have one, we're just going to take off. Take off runway 23, fly heading 160. Okay, thank you. Go. Let's get out of the cockpit here. I think we're going 1.6, right? Not really. It's like right in there somewhere. Anyway, it's off in this direction somewhere. There we go. Look at those colors, huh? In fact, I should probably gain a little bit of altitude so we can see a little bit more here. So if the scenery starts to look a little bit stuttery, just bear in mind the number of sceneries we've loaded already. Plus, it's the second helicopter, so or the second aircraft. So after a while, the memory starts to get a little upset, and we start to get micro stutters. So just FYI. So what are we thinking, folks? Are we impressed? Again, just apologize for the stutters because we're doing what we should never do with FSX or Prepared, and that's load multiple sceneries. So, but again, there were some concerns about VAS usage, right? So if you look at what we've loaded so far, we've been flying for quite a while. And we've loaded up a couple sceneries. We flew initially from Gretchen to Locarno, and then we jumped over to Bergen. Flew across the Alps. Now we're in the Netherlands, and so we haven't had an out-of-memory error yet. So I think that should say something. Methinks. Another thing about it is that I don't know if you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. You should be, but I'm not seeing a pattern. If you have, for example, ultimate terrain or ground environment, sometimes they just lay these things out in patterns, and you can see the pattern going all the way off to the horizon. But here, I'm not really seeing a distinguishable pattern. It looks almost random. It doesn't look like an actual pattern. Like I can't see a specific pattern going off in all directions. So maybe you guys are noticing that as well. I think that's a good thing. Renee says fake nature. Hashtag Holland style. So what is that? Panga says, thank you for this sweet spot of OpenLC. Yeah, I'd say this is a sweet spot. This looks very nice. In fact, you could just take off from the airport there and just fly circles around this area. It looks very nice. Certainly loving the colors. Again, just excuse the micro stutters. I mean, if we look at the frames are still really high, so there's no performance issues. It's just stutters because we're doing an awful lot of loading stuff out here. I mean, that's damn near just as good as photoreal. And let's take a look and see what it looks like from the ground. That's quite immersive, if I do say so myself. Although there's these interesting soccer fields out here. Is that at soccer field? I saw a couple of soccer fields around there somewhere. I don't know where they went. I should say football field, right? A lot of Europeans watching today. I don't want to screw that up. There's one straight ahead. We'll just land on one of these football fields here. So judging by some of the comments, looks like we're fairly impressed with this. And like I said, I don't see a distinguishable pattern here. So that makes it even all the more impressive. Because that's one of the things I hated about ground environment and Ultimate Terrain Europe was the fact that you could really distinguish patterns all the way out to the horizon, especially in the UK, where the land is just flat for as far as the eye can see, and the higher the elevation you went, the more you just saw the same pattern repeating over and over and over. So, wow, could you imagine back then if we could have ever expected anything this good? My memory's starting to get really upset. I'm seeing those flashy lines reaching up to the sky there. I want to put it in the middle of the soccer field, but I can't see. How do I know that I'm in the middle of the soccer field? There it is. It's right here, right in the middle on the circle. In the soccer field. Oh, I don't think I'm right on the circle. I think I'm right outside the circle. Ah! Ooh, that was kind of hard. Alright, oh, almost in the circle. Okay, well, anyway. So, plenty of autogen on the ground, nice trees. Actually, you know what? For kicks and giggles, let's hit the slew button, and let's just do something funny real quick. Let's go up to 10,000 feet. 8, 9, 10. Let's look at it from there. Ooh, look at that. Alright, now we get the bigger picture. Now we get the bigger picture. Let's see. It's like my eyes want to see patterns, but I really don't. So there's the full coverage area. That looks very lovely. I could just like frame that and like put that on my wall. Very good, guys. Good job. Kudos to the developers here. So I think we agree that looks pretty good. Just take a look and see if there's any comments on that. Doc3D says, I'm generally impressed, but I think it is strange that the different Orbx products doesn't seem to play so well together. Not really sure what you mean. Okay, for instance, there are some roads going right through the tulip fields that look out of place. There were water in one of them, and the Bergen Lake on the runway, little things. I know, but still annoying. Well, I certainly can imagine that. Yeah, there will probably be certain small discrepancies in certain areas, especially when you're developing something that is this big. I think that's not to go without saying that there will most likely be updates in the future. So, and I would just chalk it up to that. I mean, if it's one thing about Orbx is they're really good at getting updates out there. So, I think we have noted some of the discrepancies, and whereas again they're not big, huge issues with it. I think that little things that can be worked out in future updates. I mean, certainly they weren't things that annoyed me, but nevertheless things that we indeed did notice. So, good point. And Virat responds by saying those are completely different databases. That's the problem. Comment on my landing. Thank you. Not very good, in my opinion, but thanks. The weird-shaped lake thing is a fake nature reserve we built, according to Renee. Greg thinks it looks gorgeous. Greg, you going to get this or what? What's your take? Out of curiosity. And Renee says, everything you see now is artificial. It didn't exist 50 years ago. It's called a polder. Reclaim land. Okay, and so now the next destination is... all I have right now is Echo Delta Tango Sierra. No. What was Echo Delta Tango Sierra? Oh no, that was from yesterday. I'm sorry. We need to go to LIRN. That's right. Lima, India, Romeo, November. For Mount Vesuvius. Here we go. We'll probably hit some Capodicino. We'll probably hit some stutters because now we're loading another scenery. Might even hit an OOM, but I don't know if we will or not. So again, for those of you who are concerned about your VAS usage, about your memory, obviously VAS is going up right now quite a bit. We're seeing stutters now that we didn't see before, but we're loading up quite a bit of stuff. So I ask that you keep that in mind, according to the Antler Man. Okay. Renee says he prefers a free NL2000 photo scenery for the whole country. The custom water mask and autogen and 3D libraries. Okay. Am I in the sky or am I on the ground? What's going on here? Whoa! That has never happened before. Oh, you know why? Because I still had the slew button on, so it just automatically took off. Okay, there we go. And that reminds me, I've got to get my Fibro Naples scenery back in here. One of my favorite little freeware airports. Right, Mount Vesuvius should be right behind me. Somewhere back there. Oh, I can't see that way. Oh, there she is. Ooh, look at that. That looks very menacing, doesn't it? Anyone think they modeled in Pompeii too? I think if they did, they would have mentioned it. I don't know if they did or not. That looks freaky, doesn't it? That's a really menacing looking mountain there. Volcano. I have to be honest though, I mean in FS9 and FSX this was never ever really modeled very well. So I think this is going to be great for the approach. And again, there's a great freeware Naples airport scenery. I'm sure one of the viewers can probably punch in a URL for it for anyone who's looking to fly up here. Getting quite a bit of micro stutters right now because obviously we're really punching the memory here. And Naples, just altogether, the city actually comes together quite nicely. It looks very good from the air. A lot of autogen. Of course, there's missing skyscrapers and stuff. There's supposed to be a bunch of skyscrapers here. But they're not present. But I think there's a freeware scenery for that too that puts all the skyscrapers back in there. So, if I'm not mistaken. Let's get a little bit closer to the mountain here. I'm going to go on the record and say that with FTX Global, which is compulsory for this, coupled with FTX Global Vector, FS Global 2010, and now OpenLC Europe, I'm going to go on record and say that this is the best product ever released for Europe as a whole. I mean, when we're looking in comparisons to what we've had in the past, I'm of course referring to the Flight 1 sceneries, the ground environment, ultimate terrain. This is the best that's ever been released. I don't think Europe has ever looked this good before, and the only people who will argue with my point is those who are using photo sceneries, because obviously you're never going to get more realistic than photo scenery, but you're also not going to get autogen on it either. So there is something to be said about that. So hopefully, I saw a comment there that Mount Vesuvius is the only photorealistic representation in OpenLC Europe, and that's a pity. Well, who knows? Maybe at some point they'll come in and add a little bit more to certain destinations. That looks beautiful. I have to say, this looks really great. So are we impressed, folks? Boy, that looks freaking real, doesn't it, though? Jeez. And the way the shadow hits the on the other side of the crater there, it sort of looks like it looks menacing, like a dark hole, you know, like it's gonna swallow you whole. That looks really kind of freaky. Look at that quality, though. I don't know if it gets much more realistic than that. Wow. That looks pretty good. I can't show my poker face and try to pretend like I'm unimpressed. Alright, well maybe there's a place up there where we can put the helicopter down and get ready to sign off for today. Hopefully for some of you that have just been hanging around the house, chilling out, not doing nothing much, now that the world